Hey guys, since I've been focusing a little bit on the whole issue of dating and marrying a Filipina again, I thought I would share with everyone the story of how I met Mary Chris, my wife. Now, I've put a link of this story to in the description because I actually wrote about this a few years ago. Right after we met, I wrote the story. But anyway, I'm sure some of you who are subscribers here on YouTube have never heard it. So to start, let me back up to around 2011. I had been living in Manila at that point for about, let's see, over 8 years. And some things were not really going that well for me in Manila, especially I would say right around the 8 year mark. Some things have been building up to that, but I'll get to that in a second. One of the things that was happening or had happened was 2010 and 2011 were not very good years for me as far as relationships go. I had one relationship that was a bit of a disaster, and I'm not going to go into the details of it. And then after that, I tried again, and the next girl that I dated, uh, it was okay, but it didn't end particularly well. So I had, in a relatively short period of time, especially for me, I had seen two relationship failures. And keep in mind, I'm not the kind that's always out there trying to date different people all the time. So these were just young women that I had met and was looking for a wife, and it hadn't worked out. Another thing that had happened was I was having some difficulties in Manila. For example, the I've talked about this before in another video, but the apartment where that I'd been staying in for 1 year, the that lease had been coming to an end and was coming to an end, and they gave me this new lease that was just completely ridiculous. They were wanting they were wanting all these checks, like they were wanting 6 months worth of rent in checks, like predated. I don't know if I guess you'd call it post-dated checks, and I didn't even have a checking account. And I'd already paid a deposit to them, but they were wanting just a ridiculous deposit, like $2,000 or $3,000 worth of additional security deposit. And I was just thinking, come on, guys, I'm just living here. I've been living here for a year. I'm not planning to burn the place down. And so things in Manila just weren't going well for me. And I had a friend named Erwin who was living in Angeles City, and I had visited him a few times because he was starting a new church there. But the thought of moving there had not really ever crossed my mind. And I believe it was on a September. It was September of 2011. I happened to visit him one weekend. I wasn't really thinking about moving there. I just wanted to get away from Manila and hang out with a friend for a while. And it kind of hit me, why not move to Angeles City? So at that point, I decided, okay, I'm gonna move. I'm getting out of Manila. I believe my work here is done. I believe that the Lord is kind of closing doors and opening other doors for me to do something else. So I started planning my move to Angeles City. Now, right before I moved to Angeles City, I had gone out with a few young women here and there, and but just nothing. None of those dates really got my attention to the point that I was saying, this is going to be serious. So I moved to Angeles City on All Saints Day of 2011. And that was very intentional because I'll talk about this at some point in another video, but on All Saints Day, it's one of the few days in Manila where there's no traffic because it's a big holiday. And I chose that day to move because I knew that that the moving truck would have a really easy time getting out of Manila. So packed up all my stuff, moved to Angeles City, and the next day I believe what I did is I bought a globe tattoo just to have something where I could get online until I could get something better installed. And I had announced on my blog that I was moving to Angeles City. When I got to Angeles City that first day, I saw a friend request in Facebook. A friend request from this young woman who's just gorgeous. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of times I ignore friend requests in Facebook if I don't know someone because I would prefer them go to my public Facebook page. But this picture just got my attention, and I'm thinking there's no way that this young woman is single. She's married. She has a boyfriend. I don't know why she's adding me, but I added her, and I asked her to tell me a little bit about herself. And one thing I found out later is one of her friends read my blog all the time, and when I announced that I was moving to Angeles, that friend told her, "I think Kevin is still single, and you should add him on Facebook." Now, the funny thing, my wife had read my blog a time or two before, and she thought I was Filipino because the with that blog I had before, it's still the same blog now, but it was more. I used the term the name Kuya Kevin a lot more with the blog. Kuya is Filipino for older brother, if you're not familiar with the term. But anyway, Mary Chris's friend said you should add Kevin. Maybe you two can get to know each other now that he's in Angeles City. So she added me. I accepted, and I thanked her for adding me. She replied, and I said, "Tell me a little bit about yourself." And when she described herself, my jaw just dropped because she talked about her faith. Of course, it was important for me to marry a Christian. And she talked about she told me a little bit about herself, and it really it amazed me. And another thing that amazed me, she had never even had a boyfriend before, and I had a hard time believing that. It was like a too good to be true kind of situation. So we chatted back and forth a little bit on Facebook, and then a few days later we talked on Skype, and we started chatting on Skype whenever she was free from work. She was in one detail I forgot to mention. She was in Macau at the time. She had lived in Angeles City before. She had worked at an airline, but now she had been in Macau for a few months. And that was another thing when she added me and I found out she was in Macau. I was thinking, I don't know if long distance. I'm not sure if this is going to work. But we did make it work temporarily. We would talk on Skype for pretty much every day. Whenever she was off of work, she would get online and we would chat. And then after, it didn't really take very long before I told her I really would like to come see you. So I bought a ticket. Being in Angeles City, there's a really nice airport there, and it has flights to Macau. So I had booked a flight to Macau. She had made some arrangements of a place for me to stay in Macau. And in December, I went to see her for 3 days. Now, things had gone really well on Skype, but obviously I really didn't know what it was going to be like meeting her in person because I'm thinking, all of you know that sometimes you can chat with someone online, even through the video thing, and you're not really sure if that's going to translate into chemistry in person. So I went to Macau to see her, and I was thinking on the plane, this is going to be the best 3 days of 2011 or the most awkward, but probably not anything in between. So I went there, and meeting her in person was just incredible. And she was everything that I thought she would be and more. I spent 3 days there in Macau. Before I left, I asked her if she would be my girlfriend. I've talked about that in other videos, but that's part of Filipino courtship. You don't make assumptions. You need to ask. And before I came back to the Philippines, she said yes, she would be my girlfriend. Now, I was actually thinking about the other proposal, the more serious one. And when I came back, on my way back to the Philippines from Macau, I was thinking the next time I see her, I'm going to ask her to marry me. So yeah, things moved really fast. I'm not telling everyone else you should move that fast. I'm just move that quickly. I'm just saying for me, I knew that I had met someone really, really special, and that I may go for my whole life and never meet someone like her again. So I was sure about this. So, came back to the Philippines. A few days later, I went to the United States to spend Christmas there. It was unfortunately the last time I saw my mom face to face alive. I came back to the Philippines right around New Year's Eve, maybe a day or two before that, if my memory serves me correctly. And Chris and I had been talking this whole time, and this was really serious. We were even starting to talk a little bit about marriage and fiance visa versus spousal visa because this was something she was very sure of as well. And to make a long story short, she ended up coming back to the Philippines a little bit more quickly than she had planned. She had a contract through March with the place she was working, but she had an issue, and I had been telling her ever since I met her and had left Macau. I had been telling her, kind of a joke but kind of serious. I said, if ever you want to come back to the Philippines early, you just say the word to me, no questions asked, I'll buy you a plane ticket. So right after New Year's, she called me and said, I'm ready to come back to the Philippines. So will you buy a ticket for me? I said, yes. Just tell me the day and I'll buy you a ticket. So she came back to the Philippines on July 4th. Not July, January 4th. I'm sorry. January 4th, which is her birthday. She came back to the Philippines, and I proposed to her basically the wee hours of January 5th. So that's how I met, and that's our love story.